What up guys, welcome to another Demon Hunter build video. In this video I want to provide you an alternative build choice that I have made and have been testing over the last few days in response to the big nerfs we just got. Before I start, I want to make it clear that my last build video is still very much up to date. Both that build and this one have their pros and cons, and personally I plan to play both of them. My previous Demon Hunter build video was a major success, and I'm very happy to see that after I made it, pretty much every other Demon Hunter channel started copying it, and most of the top players started playing it as well. All that made me pretty happy because it validated my video, and is hard proof that it not only works, but it was and still is the best Demon Hunter build in the game. However, we are no longer tanks, our survivability has been heavily nerfed, and as such, most Demon Hunters are not used to play defensively, with good reason since the first rule of the Demon Hunter is that your best defense is your offense. The problem is that until you get used to retreating, you will not have much success in a build that only focuses on being offensive. Basically what I'm trying to say is that you should use this build that I'm going to present to you shortly until you get used to play defensively with my previous build. Both builds, when under ideal scenarios, will offer the same damage output. However, the old build offers much better burst potential, while this one offers you much more self-healing and more frequent burst windows. Both builds use the same stat priority, Versatility first, followed by Mastery, then Critical Strike Chance, and only then Haste. Every Demon Hunter build previous to my last video recommends Haste instead of Mastery. That makes no sense whatsoever, it never did and it never will. During the first week there was an exploit with Fodder to the Flame that was allowing Haste to dramatically increase the proc rate of Fodder to the Flame, but that has already been fixed, and if even then it didn't make sense to build Haste, now it is next to useless. You will also notice that the most recent Demon Hunter guides are now following the same stat priority as I am, and as such I'm very happy to see that my small YouTube channel is actually helping educate the community, and even though I'm not a multi-gladiator player, I have managed to change the way the rank 1 players are playing. Now if that ain't awesome, then I really don't know what is. So let's start with the reason you clicked this video, my new Demon Hunter build. Starting on the Demon Hunter class 3, make sure you have this 20 Fury. You will need this because this synergizes incredibly well with the Blind Fury talent, since every time you use I-Beam, if you don't get interrupted, you will always finish the cast with full Fury, which means that if you have 20 extra maximum Fury, you will also have that much extra Fury to spend right after, during your demonic transformation 6-second window, increasing both your burst potential and your self-healing. Also make sure to have Shard Warblades. This talent has been nerfed from 5 to 3%, and I know what you're thinking, this says that it only heals you for fire damage dealt, and thanks to any means necessary, all your fire damage is being transformed into chaos damage. Well, don't worry, because the abilities that deal fire damage, even though they are now doing chaos damage, they will still heal you for this 3%. Another change to my previous build is that now we do need this 6% maximum HP buff. We have to take all the defense we can, and that means that we will sacrifice some talent points in order to stay alive. Remember that there is no point in having amazing mobility, really cool spell effects and all that, if you can't stay alive to actually do them. All the other talents here cannot be changed, they are all necessary, regardless of what spec build you are doing afterwards. The class build is this one. I see a lot of people wasting time on sigils, don't fall for that. Sigils were not worth it before the nerf, and now that every sigil has been nerfed by 50%, I guarantee you that they are really not worth it. The only sigil I would consider is Sigil of Misery, but after the nerf, I really don't think it is worth it. I have seen a lot of Demon Hunter builds that build into sigils, and don't take Collective Anguish. Please disregard every single one of those build guides. The guys that are doing that have no idea what they're talking about. They are complete noobs to the class, and should never be taken seriously. Collective Anguish right after the hunt is our strongest class talent. You can never ever spec out of this. This is not only a very significant source of damage, but it also is an amazing source of self-healing. Now that both Fodder to the Flame and our soul absorptions have been nerfed, Collective Anguish is more important than ever. This talent has not been nerfed, I don't expect it to be, and without this you cannot strive as a Demon Hunter. Now I'm talking so much about Collective Anguish because my entire build is built around it. As you can see, we have sacrificed Essence Break in this build. Essence Break has been nerfed by 28% in PvP combat. That is a major nerf, and it just makes you think twice about spending 4 points just to get it. I still believe it is a good talent. Know Your Enemy is also pretty good, even though we are not building into Critical Strike. We will still have some since it's our third option, so both of these are always nice to have. However, my objective with this build is to maximize our self-healing and thus increase our survivability. Cycle of Hatred will do just that. With Cycle of Hatred, you will be reducing your high beam cooldown from somewhere between 5 to 10 seconds, depending on how much uptime you can get on the target. Under an ideal scenario, you will have a 30-second high beam, which means that you will also have a 30-second Collective Anguish, a 30-second Inner Demon, a 30-second Restless Hunter, and a 30-second cooldown Demonic. As you can see, we have a lot that synergizes with I-Beam, and reducing its cooldown, even if for about 5 seconds, can very well be a game changer. Given that we will have shorter I-Beams, Essence Break would no longer align with our burst windows, putting you in a position where you would have to either wait for I-Beam in order to Essence Break, which would completely break the point of this build, or make you Essence Break outside of Demonic form, which would make this talent much less impactful. Going with this build you will have Inner Demon, which will give you bonus damage during Demonic. Remember that all bonus damage you do during Demonic is also healing you back, and thus increasing your survivability. We also get Restless Hunter, which will increase Blade Dance damage by 50% as soon as Demonic form expires. That's okay, nothing too crazy, but given that it also gives you a free Fel Barrage charge, it is now increasing both your mobility and your damage output, so I believe it is worth the point. I'm pretty sure that a lot of you are getting a bit pissed off because I didn't take Netherwalk. Guys, I really tried to get it, and please don't take this the wrong way, but in my opinion, Netherwalk is a new player trap. Just give me a chance to explain it, and maybe you'll share my opinion shortly. As a Demon Hunter, your first rule, as I said earlier, is that in order to stay alive, you have to be eating things. For as long as you have your optimal damage output going, you will be regenerating HP as you should. What I want you to do now is think backwards in what circumstances do you die most of the times. And guys, as a Demon Hunter, I guarantee you that pretty much every time you die is because you're not being able to connect with your target. Our biggest threat in Arena is getting stunned. How many times have you been one-shotted in a Rogue stun lock, in a Windwalker leg sweep, in a Retribution Paladin Hammer of Justice, Warrior Stormbolt, you name it. And now let me ask you, what is Netherwalk going to do after you get stunned? The answer is very simple, nothing. You cannot use Netherwalk while suffering from a stun effect. Just this point makes Netherwalk essentially useless in our number one death threat scenario. I mean, if you are a big fan of Netherwalk and you really like it, then by all means go for it, but what I want you to know is that you are getting used to a playstyle that differs greatly from the Demon Hunter ways. The second scenario where you will die is not being able to connect to your target by either being slowed to oblivion or getting rooted in place. Do you truly believe that spending a 3-minute cooldown just to dispel a root effect and closing the gap with your target is worth it? I don't think so. And considering the 3 points you will have to sacrifice just to get it, means that your damage output will suffer, and remember, when your damage output suffers, so does your self-healing. Another thing to keep in mind is that while you're netherwalking, you are essentially useless to your team. Yes, you can buy 6 seconds of life for yourself, but the enemy team's output will not be reduced just because you press this. They will simply switch targets and burst down your teammate instead of yourself. You are basically redirecting the damage you would otherwise take to your teammates. There are situations where that is good, yes, I agree with that, but in reality, all this talent will give you is 1 combat reset per match, and remember, from the moment you press it, your healer has only 6 seconds to get you to full HP, and you know what? If you got to a point where you need to press Netherwalk, that is because the enemy team created a setup to get you down. Now, if the enemy team wanted to kill you right there and then, and thus forcing you to use Netherwalk, what do you believe are the odds that they cross-controlled your healer in order to do so? In low ratings, maybe 50-50, but in moderate to high ratings, those odds are 100%. And if your healer is cross-crowd controlled, which he will be, all you will do is delay your death by 6 seconds. And in the meanwhile, instead of actually trying to regen your HP through your built-in Leech, or managing to crowd control the DPS that just pulled all his cooldowns to get you down, you are just standing there, walking around for 6 seconds, and hoping that your healer will somehow dispel himself, and get you to full HP out of nowhere. Netherwalk is a talent that should be used when you are with comms with your teammates. If you can communicate with your healer, then I agree, this is a must-have talent. But in a solo queue scenario, which to be honest is pretty much all I care about, Netherwalk will be next to useless. Now your entire build is built around your I-beam synergies, so you make sure to make the most out of this talent. However, remember that we are still a solo and main build, and with that in mind, your DPS priority list is still the same as in my previous build video. Guys, there are a few talents that we can never spec out of, and those talents are these. Everything you are seeing in your screen right now cannot be changed. You have 5 points to switch around as you like, but these talents that I am showing you right now, you cannot change any of them. Havoc Demon Hunter as a spec doesn't even work without Soul Rend. If you take any means necessary out, you instantly lose your entire one-shot potential, and not only that, you will also be reducing your Fel Blade and your Immolation Aura damage output by quite a lot. I've seen some people speccing out of Burning Wound. Guys, don't ever think about it. This talent does so much for you, even if you don't see a lot of damage coming from this. Remember that 40% of your Immolation Aura damage is coming from it. On top of that, this is incredibly easy to proc. You'll have 100% uptime on this easily, many times on multiple targets at once, and having a bleed effect that lasts for 15 seconds is amazing because it makes stealth classes have a much harder time getting into stealth. One thing I would advise you to do is to stun your target before you I-beam. I have never been a fan of stunning the kill target. I much prefer to cross-crowd control a healer or a free casting DPS. However, taking in account how dependent we are on I-beam right now, we really can't afford to get interrupted. You can now easily align it with Fel Eruption, giving you a guaranteed burst window every 30 seconds. That will also heal you by quite a lot. Now you'll notice that I didn't put a point into Shattered Destiny. Believe me, I would if I could, but the only place you can take a point out of is Serrated Glaive, and since this is a high beam build, you really shouldn't do that. Also, Shattered Destiny doesn't have much of an impact. The one thing it will do for you is allow you to fit 2 blade dances within your burst window. That's pretty nice, but 10% uninterrupted I-beam damage is way better. Also remember that the whole point of this build is to get in and out of demon form, not stay in it. You want to proc your inner demon, your collective anguish, do your blade dance plus your 2 chaos strikes, get out of demon form and blade dance once more to proc Restless Hunter. I will now show you what the burst rotations will look like. If you want a more detailed demonstration, please check my previous build video. I will leave the link to it in the description and had a pop-up at the top of this video right now. So this is what your short burst rotation will look like. Now your heavy burst rotation will look pretty much the same, you will just add the hunt to it. As you've noticed, I now use the hunt during our demonic form window. The reason for that is because, as I've said earlier, we need all the healing we can get, and since the hunt is by far our hardest hitting spell, then you will get a lot of HP back as Leech because of soul rending, so make sure you fit it somewhere during your burst window rotation. Also, you'll notice that I'm no longer using Fel Barrage. I mostly only use this to bait interrupts, in order to be able to free cast I-Beam right after, but a lot has changed since, and now a Demon Hunter that stands still for 3 seconds channeling this is a dead Demon Hunter. I've also seen people using Glaive Tempest. Guys, this is a nice ability to use in battlegrounds, but in the arena, forget about it. You will very rarely get the value out of it. Even though this is a glaive ability, this does not proc Soul Rend. The only way to proc Soul Rend is directly through the Throw Glaive spell. Just ignore these 2 talents for any build you choose to go with. Another thing to keep in mind is that the 30 Fury you spend on this, you could have instead used the Chaos Strike and reduce your I-Beam cooldown by 1 second, which in the long run will be just so much better. As for the PvP talents, what I had before was Reverse Magic. This is still incredibly powerful. You can use it to reflect roots and some other magical effects. One very fun use to this is to reflect a Priest's Mind Games ability. That alone can win you the match, and is a pretty fun interaction to see happening. Now remember that you can use this to take crowd control off of your teammates. This includes all the magical crowd control abilities, for example, Polymorph, Fayr, Hammer of Justice, X, and so on. To be honest, I've been playing without it because, with how fragile we are now, we truly need Glimpse. Glimpse will provide you immunity to crowd control effects for as long as you are in the air, and will reduce your damage taken by 75% until you land. We need this. We didn't before, but now we really need it. It was already strong, it has always been strong. We have just now reached the point where all the defense we can get, we should take it, and Glimpse is now the only defensive that will make us survive a Rogue, Druid or a Windwalker burst window. However, in order to do that, you'll have to predict when they're going to stun you, and since stuns are instant cast abilities, there is truly no predicting it. Any competent PvP DPS will only use his cooldowns right after the stun, not before, so you won't even have an animation to give you a hint. I know that this talk might be discouraging you from using it, but guys, to be honest, with how squishy we are right now, if we manage to predict 1 stun out of 5 with this, then it will already be worth taking. Remember that Vengeful Retreat can be used as a gap closer, I have showed you how on the previous video, and now with this talent, reducing the damage you take by 75%, you can time it to, for example, absorb a Marksmanship Hunter aimed shot while closing the gap at the same time. The same can be said for a Frost Mage Glacial Spike, a Balanced Druid Full Moon, or even a Destruction Warlock Chaos Bolt. This talent has a very high skill ceiling. It is in my opinion the PvP talent that offers the highest skill ceiling in the game, and knowing how and when to use this is going to be the difference between a good Demon Hunter and a master one. Chaotic Imprint, we cannot change this. This is flat damage increased while Soul Rend bleed. There are very few scenarios where you can talent out of it, but I've already explained it on the other video, so I will not bother you with that again. And as for the third choice, we have Detainment. This is another talent that is being heavily influenced by my solo queue playstyle. If you are playing with a pre-made team, you don't need this. There will still be usages for it that I've explained before, as to prevent a low target from getting healed up, but as a general rule of thumb, if you're playing solo queue, spec into it, otherwise you're going to get very frustrated when you see your teammates breaking your crowd control, and if you're playing with teammates, then please swap it into Reverse Magic. Now guys, just to update my main build video, I want to show you where you should put your Fel Barrage point on. The answer is in Furious Gaze. I know Haste doesn't do much for us, I've talked about it at the start of the video, but a raw 10% haste during our bursts is something that you can't buy for 1 single point anywhere else on the talent tree. I want to remind you that regardless of the build, as I said at the start of the video, Mastery is your main stat right after Versatility. The only scenario where you would build outside of Mastery would be in a Chaos Strike focused build, where Critical Strike chance would be on par with Mastery, maybe even a little bit better. Otherwise, Mastery is always the way to go. Now you will see me playing both builds. I have to say that my favorite build is still this one, but there are many scenarios where the new build will shine. For example, in the games where you don't have a healer to back you up, either because you are playing 2v2 or because you are playing solo queue and you have been matched with a tank instead of a healer. In that scenario, my new build will allow you to stay alive longer while dishing about the same amount of damage, but healing you up for a substantially higher amount. Also, having your burst available every 30 seconds makes it much more unpredictable and harder to respond with defensives with. As always, I highly encourage you guys to try everything out by yourselves. Please don't trust blindly on what anyone says, not even myself. Your playstyle might be different from mine, and that does not mean that either of us is wrong. It just means that we can both be efficient with builds that have been built for us. And now I will say something that has gotten me quite a few mean comments, but I really don't care, and as such I will say it again in the hopes that those people will comment again in order to boost my video algorithm. Guys, the only rating that matters is the solo queue rating. There are so many rank 1 players that know next to nothing about this game. There are even popular streamers that have no idea what they are doing. They make the same scripted combos since 2004. They make sure that they play classes that are forever on the meta. You all know that I'm talking about rogues, priests, druids and mages. There has never been one season since 2004 where none of these classes had a god tier spec. There is a reason why all the streamers are rogues, mages and druids. Now what is being fun to watch is that those same rank 1 players are heavily struggling to reach Gladiator in solo queue. And well, the reason is quite simple. It's because they don't know enough about their own spec, they never needed to, they can only play scripted pre-made combos, and they have a pretty limited idea of what other classes do. If you guys don't believe me, I encourage you to go watch tier lists from rank 1 player streamers and pay attention to how they talk about other classes. They will be so generic that at the end of the video you will be as informed as you were before you started watching it. With all of this said, I can almost already hear the YouTube filter blocking a whole bunch of comments from butthurt gladiators who have gotten their gladiator titles in seasons where the average casual player rating was around 2000. And just like that guys, we have reached the end of this build video. I really hope you enjoyed it. For a more specific gameplay guide, please watch my previous build video, and also I highly encourage you to watch my PvP trinket guide video, especially now when Demon Hunters should never use a DPS trinket. Always use the emblem trinket paired with either the medallion or the sigil, sigil being the best option for solo queue, and the medallion being the best option for organized team play. I go much more in detail in my trinket guide, and I will leave a link to it in the description below. As always guys, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing. Remember to stay safe, stay strong, and I'll see you in the arena.